Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A busy day for the San Diego County Board of Supervisors as they swore in their newest member. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The board's meeting is still underway at this hour. Earlier today, supervisors decided not to implement a new law that expands who can be involuntarily treated. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says it could be delayed until as late as January 2025.
In California, involuntary treatment policy has remained largely unchanged since it was written and signed into law in 1967. So this change, SB 43, I think, as we've established, is a big deal.
Before, supervisors voted whether or not to delay SB 43, which would allow more people with severe substance abuse disorders to be involuntarily treated. San Diego County's Behavioral Health Services Director Luke Bergman told the board this expansion would be far-reaching.
SB 43 will almost certainly result in many more folks being brought into emergency departments with similar presentations. But SB 43 comes with no new resources.
That's a major concern for the county's hospital systems, which supported delaying implementation for up to a year.
We're simply not ready today to start the system. None of our hospitals disagree with the context of trying to get people help. It's more about having a system in place so that we can be successful.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria spoke out against the vote to delay implementation. He understands that hospitals are already busy, but
they are caring for this population today, and then they discharge them onto our sidewalks. And I have to feel like San Diegans feel as though a hospital setting is a better place for very sick people, is better than the sidewalk, which is where they're ending up now. We've got to figure this out. And delaying is not going to help us figure it out. It's just going to delay us having to make the tough choices that we know are ahead.
Officials from the city's police and fire department say first responders are currently in a tough spot.
Police officers shouldn't be mental health workers on the street, but we get called because we're the only ones that have the duty to respond.
My firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs see the same individual cycles from the streets to the emergency rooms, back out to the streets, to jails.
In a 3-2 vote, supervisors ultimately agreed with Chair Nora Vargas's proposal to have more time to develop how this expanded involuntary treatment will actually work.
That our county team has never been afraid to implement smart policies or to address some tough issues. But I also insist that we've always been very careful and that we do things right and we do it well. Because we're talking about real people.
We can't overrun our emergency rooms. We just can't do that. We can't take that risk.
Supervisors Joel Anderson and Tara Lawson-Reamer voted against delaying implementation. Lawson-Reamer questioned county officials, suggesting they could have been moving quicker.
And I think I'm a little concerned that we haven't, we weren't focused with the urgency and the crisis that I think that this demands.
Supervisors did agree to have staff report back in 90 days to assess if there's a possibility that this involuntary treatment expansion could happen sooner. Earlier Tuesday, the San Diego City Council voted to declare a behavioral health bed crisis. Part of that directed staff to explore easing zoning or finding additional funding to create more beds.
Not just for homeless people, it's for any number of people who don't have the proper care. And it's working with hospitals, first responders, a lot of the organizations that the city has to partner with. They are taking on the brunt, and we're trying to call on other levels of government to do what they can.
County officials say a lack of outpatient behavioral health beds often leads to people staying hospitalized longer than needed. The county has also been working on crisis treatment diversion programs to help keep people out of emergency rooms. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Monica Montgomery Stepp was sworn in today as the San Diego County Supervisor for District 4. Montgomery Stepp won last month's special election with more than 61% of the vote. She's the first black woman ever to serve on the County Board of Supervisors. After taking her oath of office, she paid tribute to Leon Williams, the first and only black man elected supervisor.
But there is a long road ahead of us in challenging the status quo. 4 decades have passed since the first black person was elected to serve our county. Together, we will be working to change a system that has long stood as a board that had forgotten about the voices and experiences of the people who make up this county.
Montgomery Stepp's election means Democrats once again have a majority on the Board of Supervisors. It's also the first time in history that a majority of the supervisors are women.
Well, I will tell you that we aren't necessarily talking about a whole lot of action here across the region over these next few days. The big story is really going to be that temperature swing. We are going to start on a slight cooling trend. Before those temperatures do start to rise, we'll tell you where the coolest days of the week are going to land before we start seeing a warm-up.
The presidents of 3 universities are testifying before Congress on the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. As Laura Aguirre reports, House lawmakers want to know what they're doing to prevent it in the future.
Thank you for the moment.
Fighting anti-Semitism on campus took center stage Tuesday as the heads of 3 major universities testified before a House Education Subcommittee. A common theme was clear right out of the gate.
I have sought to confront hate while preserving free expression. We need both safety and free expression for universities and ultimately democracy to thrive.
In addition to my duties to keep the campus safe, I must at the same time ensure that we protect speech and viewpoint diversity for everyone.
The challenge, keeping free speech from fostering hateful actions.
Free speech does not permit harassment, discrimination, bias, threats, or violence in any form.
Harvard, UPenn, and MIT are not alone in experiencing a rise in on-campus anti-Semitism in recent weeks. At other schools like Cornell, George Washington University, and Tulane, recent anti-Semitic incidents have also made national headlines. The university presidents testifying Tuesday insist they're committed to safety and inclusion for all students.
When speech crosses over into conduct that violates our policies, we do take action. We will never, ever shrink from our moral responsibility to combat anti-Semitism.
It's not going to be fixed overnight, but we are in the process of working on it and hopefully tamping down anti-Semitism in America once again.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
Meanwhile, Republican and Democratic lawmakers are at odds over an aid package for Ukraine and Israel. While Democrats are taking steps to bring this matter to the floor this week, many in the GOP say they won't budge unless some of the funds are used to address immigration in the U.S.
The security supplemental must include funding and policy reforms to address the crisis at the southern border.
Unfortunately, many Republican extreme demands are still on the table, things that Republicans know can't get Democratic votes, and that's our stumbling block right now.
The Senate is set to close for the year in 2 weeks, and despite the stalemate, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is insisting Republicans stay at the negotiating table. The U.S. Senate confirmed hundreds of top military nominations today after they were held up for 10 months.
Today, hundreds of military families across the country can breathe a sigh of relief. The Senate has now unanimously confirmed hundreds of military nominations that were held up for 10 months by a single person, the senator from Alabama. Thank God, these military officers will now get the promotions they so rightfully earned.
Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville had delayed the confirmations of more than 450 top Pentagon nominees since March. It was a political move to oppose the Pentagon's reproductive rights policy.
I'm releasing everybody. I still got a hold on, I think, 11 four-star generals. Everybody else is completely released from me. Now, somebody else might, I think there's a few other people got holds on 1 or 2 or 3 people. But other than that, it's over.
He says while his blockade saw some success, it really didn't work the way that he had hoped. A youth group is urging President Biden to formally declare a climate emergency. Sunrise Movement says it's holding off on endorsing the president in 2024 until he commits to their goals. They want drilling stopped on federal lands and waters, renewable energy infrastructure expanded, and the Justice Department to prosecute fuel companies for their role in climate disinformation. President Biden has been trying to get support from environmentally conscious voters while also parrying attacks on rising energy and gas prices. Deforestation around the world is accelerating climate change and threatening biodiversity. Some tiny forests now flourishing in Berkeley School Yards are showing students how they can make a difference. Ann Makovic reports these groves are small but mighty.
On a busy street corner in Berkeley.
What's it?
A tiny revolution is taking root.
It's a really special type of forest. It smells really good. I saw a few bees.
Instead of pavement or a manicured lawn,
See the dots?
there's a dense little pocket of native plants and saplings flourishing in rich soil in front of the Berkeley Technology Academy. It's called a Miyawaki, or microforest.
They grow much faster. And they use less water, which is very, very good.
Tracking its growth, some fifth graders from a nearby school. Less than a year ago, they actually helped plant it.
15 inches, yeah.
Overseeing the project, their science teacher, Neelam Patil.
Well, the reason we're planting the Miyawaki forests and using the Miyawaki method is to address climate change.
For years, Neelam has taught her students about the dangers of climate change, and now she's showing them what they can do about it by planting these tiny, incredibly fast-growing forests.
What color are these?
The Miyawaki method first intensely restores the soil and then tightly plants together only native flora. Research shows these tiny forests grow 10 times faster and sequester more carbon. They reduce the urban heat island effect and filter the air. They also quickly become a cradle for renewed biodiversity, which is currently under threat as the planet continues to warm.
We're basically facing 40% biodiversity loss by the end of the decade. We need solutions, and the Miyawaki forest is a very effective and efficient solution.
So far, students and volunteers have planted Miyawaki forests at 4 Berkeley schools. Now there's a chance they can grow more.
The city owns a lot more land in Berkeley than the schools.
Berkeley City Council member Sophie Hahn has recommended funding a new pilot program. It would plant 2 new Miyawaki forests, this time on city sites, especially near freeways where there's poor air quality and fewer trees.
This is an issue that is urgent for everyone, and it is particularly urgent for our lower income and communities of color. All of this is tied into climate and to equity in very powerful ways. We need to do everything we can.
These children feel inspired.
When I look at it, I feel very proud, and I am very happy that I'm helping the world.
That one seems like it might be.
And cultivating hope for the future.
San Diego researchers are getting a better understanding of the boom-bust cycles of anchovies. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the fish is a key part of the region's food web.
That dark shadow in the ocean off Scripps Pier in 2014, not a cloud moving over the water. It's a huge school of anchovies.
It's especially noticeable because we see a lot of them, because there's a lot of anchovies out there.
Rasmus Swalethorpe says anchovies are a key part of the marine food web. When there are a lot, birds, larger fish, and marine mammals prosper, but numbers sometimes fall precipitously. A newly published paper in Nature Communications concludes anchovies thrive when the food chain is shorter, with fewer steps between single-cell plants and their mouths.
You have a lot of nutrients coming off from the deep ocean that are fueling phytoplankton production, and then that's fueling the whole food chain that the anchovies rely on to go and survive.
The research relied on a unique library that's been tracking the ocean since the 1940s. Cal Coffee has ocean samples that contain plankton and fish larvae, allowing the team to measure populations and ocean conditions between 1960 and 2005.
We go through the plankton, we pull out the larval fish, and we identify them as species. So we've been keeping track of over 800 species of fishes since the late 1940s.
Anchovy samples.
The samples allowed the team to measure the length of the anchovy food chain and compared it to population numbers. Knowing when the food chain is long or short could help predict boom or bust cycles. But that's only part of the equation.
The short answer is we don't exactly know. We know a lot of things that are important, but our ability to really measure that and measure that the broad spatial and temporal scales that covers their populations is very limited.
Researchers also hope to develop a better understanding of what changes when the food chain gets longer or shorter. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Did you feel it? The ground moved this morning across San Diego County, but it didn't quite make it to the Richter scale. As KPBS education reporter MG Perez shows us, it was caused by a collective jump for science.
There is nothing like a good warm-up.
Just like that.
When you are preparing for the countdown to an event of seismic proportions. For a couple of minutes this morning at exactly 10:15, here at the Fleet Science Center in Balboa Park, everyone who could jumped and shook and moved. The idea was to get so much motion going that it could be picked up by a seismograph. All of this in the name of science, which is a subject most of these youngsters enjoy.
You can learn a lot of things, and it can do a lot of things for you.
Why were there people jumping this morning? What were they doing?
They're jumping to see if the floor can shake.
We all jumped up and down and moved the pen, and it made a whole little mark on the paper.
This was also a celebration of the Fleet Science Center's 50th anniversary, half a century of connecting the power of science with San Diegans and visitors from around the world who come here to discover and learn. According to the center's statistics, children only spend 5% of their waking hours in school.
Our brains are learning all the time. So what we're really engaged in is how do we activate that other 95% of our waking hours so the kids are learning all the time? Because they do. They're sponges. They're excited. They are scientists.
It may not have registered on the actual Richter scale, but these homemade seismographs provided a lesson not only here at the Fleet Center, but in classrooms around the county, too. In these pictures, you can see what was happening in some of those classrooms. At the exact same moment, the ground was moving with momentum. And it was a little overwhelming for 6-year-old Grayson Michaels, who considers himself a budding scientist.
Because it's like where you can learn a lot of stuff that you don't know.
What have you learned in science?
I've learned if you
Grayson was a little shaken by all the jumping and stimulation, but like any good scientist, he did not give up. He learned a lot here today.
I learned about Jupiter. It's really hot.
And speaking of hot, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a firefighter.
Why?
Because I can burn down fires.
That is something to jump about. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And dozens of elementary students in Lincoln Park walked away with a new bike this holiday season, courtesy of the San Diego Padres. It's all part of the Padres and SDG&E's holiday give back tour. Third graders from Porter Elementary wrote essays about what they wanted to be when they grew up. Well, the students also got some Friars swag. Padre star Manny Machado says he knows how much this means to the kids in the southeast region of San Diego.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's the holiday spirit. I think, these times are always tough for a lot of families, for everyone around the world. And, for us to come out here as an organization, individually, giving these kids some joy, giving them something that they could, dream about.
And Machado also remembered late Padres owner Peter Seidler saying he would have loved today because he loved giving back to the community.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines, what you need to know as we head throughout the rest of the week. Now, temperatures are going to start a downward trend as we head into the middle and later half of the week. And with that, we're also going to be increasing those morning and night coastal low clouds. So, hey, that may cause some problems there with lower visibility. So heads up, again, we are talking about some low cloud cover as we head over these next few days during the morning and night. Now, as we head into the weekend, though, we are going to start a warming trend, so the cooler air isn't going to stick around for too long. Let's take a look ahead tonight. Metro, you're dropping down to a low 49, mainly clear skies. And well, hey, that's going to be the story there along the coast. Oceanside 45, San Diego 49. And as we continue to travel a little bit further east, Ramona dropping down to a low of 45, Borrego Springs 48, and Mount Laguna 40. Now, where do temperatures rise for tomorrow? Well, you'll still see plenty of sunshine here. San Diego at 70, Oceanside 72, Borrego Springs flirting with 80, and Mount Laguna coming in with a high of 54. Now, here along the coast, we are going to continue on that cooling trend there, like I said, as we head into Wednesday, Thursday, and even to Friday. That's where temperatures are going to drop down to the 60s. Though as we head into Saturday, that's where we're going to start to see that upswing again with mostly sunny skies. Before I get to the rest of the weekend, though, again, look at that on Thursday, fog to sun. Again, I'm talking about some low-level cloud cover there, especially early on in the day and late in the day. So make sure you are taking precautions there on the roads. Now, as we head throughout the rest of the weekend, well, Sunday, you'll hit a high of 73 with partly sunny skies. Now, let's take a look a little bit further inland there. Wednesday, you're at 76, but then you're dropping down to the upper 60s there on Thursday, also dealing with some foggy conditions. But temperatures will start to rise again as we head into the weekend, flirting with 80 again by Sunday. Now, for the mountains, well, you'll overall stay relatively steady here over the next few days. We're in the 50s, though it is going to be a little breezy there as we head into Thursday, but that chill is real, and where you're going to see that cool down is going to be throughout the beginning of the weekend before we start to see a slight uptick in the mercury. Not much. By Sunday, we'll hit a high of 49. There in the deserts, though, a little bit further east, again, you're not necessarily tracking a significant warm-up as we enter the weekend. You'll actually start to see a slight cool down there. Wednesday, 79, 75 Thursday, 67 by Saturday, but back up to 70 by Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
I'm Amna Navaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, U.S. officials warn Congress that funding for Ukraine is quickly running out. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's something else you should mark your calendars. The National Park Service has released its list of free admission days for next year. And those days are Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 15th, the first day of National Park Week on April 20th, Juneteenth on June 19th, and the anniversary of the Great Outdoors Act on August 4th, National Public Lands Day on September 28th, and Veterans Day on November 11th. And you may still have to pay for certain amenities like camping, boat launches, or some special tours. It is a wonderful time of the year for film lovers. KPBS film critic Beth Accomando says Digital Gym Cinema in East Village is the best place to find cinematic gifts this week.
For anyone mourning the loss of the Ken Cinema, San Diego does have one new venue that's trying to fill the void, Digital Gym Cinema. Starting tonight with the 4K restoration of Victims of Sin, you can discover just how diverse and stunning the programming is. Let's start with Havana-born Niñon Sevilla, who's less an actress and more a force of nature. In a series of Mexican films in the 1950s, she captivated audiences with her blonde bombshell looks and sensual dancing. In Victims of Sin, she plays Violetta, a cabaret performer whose life takes a downward spiral when she takes in an abandoned baby. The film mixes an intoxicating cocktail of seductive film noir, lush melodrama, and Catholic redemption. The 4K restoration highlights the incandescent beauty of both Sevilla and the black and white cinematography. Victims of Sin, in contrast to a lot of American noir, does not have a femme fatale orchestrating the downfall of hapless men, but rather gives us a fallen woman with a heart of gold. The melodrama sucks us in, but the noir underpinnings add a gritty edge. The cabaret backdrop lets Sevilla and the musicians shine and allows for some naughty songs that have now been translated and subtitled. Plus, we get to see vibrant female characters who display surprising agency. Next up, Studio Ghibli's The Boy and the Heron opens on Friday. Director, writer, and animator Hayao Miyazaki has been called the Japanese Walt Disney. But perhaps the more accurate description I've heard is calling him the Kurosawa of animation, because his stories are complex and epic. The film features hand-drawn cell animation, and, as with all Miyazaki's films, it's visually breathtaking. In terms of artistry as well as narrative, The Boy and the Heron is far superior to any animated film Hollywood is releasing this holiday season. On Saturday, Digital Gym exemplifies its diversity, not just in terms of the films it shows, but how it shows them, as the touring See It on 16mm program returns with the holiday horror classic, Black Christmas. Audiences can delight not only in a 70s cult film that's often cited as the inaugural slasher movie, but also watching it with a 16mm projector purring in the cinema. And then close out the weekend with another unconventional Christmas movie, 1986's Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone.
The disease, and I'm the cure.
It closes out the Film Geek's year of action that I helped program, and will be serving pizza, Cobra style with scissors, at the screening. So treat yourself to an early holiday gift and go see any of these films at Digital Gym Cinema this week. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition will have more on the breakthrough in approving hundreds of military promotions after one senator delayed them for months. And be sure to get the latest from KPBS News delivered right into your inbox. Breaking news, arts, and our top headlines are all available as newsletters. And as always, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.